What's up everyone and welcome back to our channel, and today we're going to talk about how do coaches and scouts exactly identify and pick up talents. What is the detailed process involved in this? So stay tuned because this video is going to give you all the right tools to spot tomorrow's champions. Alright, so let's start with one of the most important aspects, which is about understanding maturation timing. In sports, you might have noticed some kids of the same age group, some kids will be really taller or really physically more developed compared to others who might be smaller in stature but who might be a little more technically and tactically gifted. This, my friends, is about early and late maturation. Early maturers hit puberty sooner and may seem dominant at their age. They're stronger, they're faster, they outperform their peers in most of the aspects in the sport. So if you're a coach or a scout who's only looking at which youth is winning these competitions only, you will be leaving behind all those late maturers out there. You might ask, how will I know who's an early or a late maturer? This is where biological age comes in. A kid's biological age refers to how far along they're in their physical development, not just their chronological age. You can estimate this using non-invasive methods like peak height velocity. So peak height velocity is a very fancy way of saying growth spurt. It's the time where kids are growing the fastest during puberty. For boys, it usually happens around 13 to 14 years old, and for girls, 11 to 12. But for some kids, this can hit earlier or later than others. So to estimate PHV, you can use simple measurements like your standing height, your sitting height, and your leg length. Combine that with the child's age, and you can use certain formulas to predict when the child is likely to hit their growth spurt. So let's say you've got a 13-year-old boy who's shorter than his teammates. But when you calculate his PHV, you find out that he's going to hit his growth spurt in 1 year. This means he might be a late bloomer and might catch up and even surpass his teammates later on. Next, let's talk about anthropometrics, which are basically body's measurements. Think about height, weight, arm span, leg length, and even body composition. These anthropometric factors are important in identifying talent because they give us cues about what sport an athlete might excel in. So here's a real world example. In sports like basketball, taller athletes have an advantage, especially in positions like center. But in a sport like gymnastics, being shorter can actually be beneficial for body control and balance. So to measure anthropometrics effectively, it's very important to measure relative proportions of the body. For example, in swimming, a long arm span relative to the height is an advantage. So rather than looking at pure height, look at relative proportions. Consider how an athlete's overall body structure relates to their sport. Now, here's where it gets very interesting. You can't compare the performance of a 12-year-old who's hit puberty early to the one that hasn't. Their size, their muscle mass, and their hormones give an early maturer an advantage, but that doesn't mean they have a higher potential. This is why you need to scale their performance to their maturity level. So one way to do this is to normalize the data based on their biological age rather than their chronological age. So by scaling for biological maturity, you can see that late developers often improve drastically once they hit their growth spurt. So patience is the key. So we spoke about the physical traits. Physical traits is just one small facet or one small part of talent identification. Psychosocial traits like mental toughness, leadership, and resilience are massive indicators for future success. Why? Because sports at elite levels not just demand physical capabilities, they also demand the ability to handle pressure and bounce back from setbacks. Let's take a young footballer who gets injured but has the mental toughness and resilience to bounce back from the injury, to do a very proper rehab and to perform better than what he or she used to perform before. That's an example of mental toughness. And this mindset can take them farther in the longer run. So it's important for scouts and coaches to look for players who show leadership and adaptability on the pitch. Coaches and scouts must watch how athletes deal with problems and challenges. Are they problem solvers? Do they work well with their teammates? These qualities separate good and average athletes from the great ones. Lastly, let's not forget about talent recycling and multi-stage talent identification. Sometimes athletes who aren't identified early or switch sport later in life end up getting identified later on and excelling in their sport. A perfect example here is rowing. Most elite rowers don't start until their 20s. Their background in other sports help them bring discipline, endurance, and strength to rowing. So these late blooming athletes might not have been their strongest or the most talented during their early childhood days, but their maturity, their mental toughness, and refined motor skills allowed them to rise to the top. So there you have it. Talent identification isn't about identifying today's winners. It's about understanding growth, maturation, psychosocial traits, and the long-term potential of each athlete. If you're a coach or a scout, look beyond the physical abilities and focus on the entire developmental journey. So that's it for today. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the fields of sports science. And also make sure to drop a comment if you've experienced or seen a late blooming athlete making it big in their career. So the take home message is the best talent is not the obvious one. See you soon, guys. Cheers.